So, what is the Walt Disney strategy? The Walt Disney strategy is one of the many tools in NLP, but this one is particularly designed to make your dreams come true. You all have dreams, don't you?
I did before today.
Maybe you've got a dream about being a therapist, running a therapy practice, being a successful trainer, running practitioner courses. Maybe you want to carry NLP into the business community, where you can really begin to sort out some of the ethics in there. Walt Disney is a very good way of doing it. And used in conjunction with timeline, which you're all well familiar with, you in particular, it really works even more powerfully than when it's used on its own. All we're going to look at today, though, are how to use it on its own. So while we do it, it's another tool in the tool bag. You remember the old saying, if you've only got a hammer in the toolkit, every problem looks like a nail. Yeah? So the more tools there are in your tool bag, the more choice you've got. And remember, NLP, what's it about? Flexibility, choice. Exercising choice, exercising flexibility. So, the more tools in the tool bag, the more choice you've got, the more flexible you can be. And remember, won't you, the law of requisite variety. I need say no more. Right, good. How did it come about? Where? What? What is it? Well, goodness me. You heard of Robert Dilts? Yeah? Robert Dilts, the only computer with a soul. Robert Dilts. I've seen Robert Dilts. I've attended 4 days with Robert Dilts. But anyway, it's generally attributed to Robert Dilts, and it came about by analysing the behaviour of Walt Disney. People who'd worked with Walt Disney realised that some days he was a pretty strange guy. Some days he'd walk into the office, they say, and he had the most incredible visions. Anything was possible. Not only anything, but everything. But then other days he'd walk in, he'd walk in and he'd be picky. All day long he'd be picky. That wasn't right, that wasn't right, that wasn't right. Pick, 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 pick. But then on other days he'd walk in and he'd be totally realistic. Totally realistic, And he had this innate ability, this supreme ability. Do you know when he thought of doing Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs? You know Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, right? Yeah. When he wanted the finance for that, he had nothing. He had virtually nothing. He went to the bank with that simple idea. Now, wouldn't that be useful? To have an ability where you can go to the bank with an idea and very little else and get the money to turn it into Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs? Yeah? Now, of course, I'm not promising or even suggesting that you will be able to do this immediately you leave this room.
Alright.
However, I think you'll agree that it's useful if we can extract something out of Walt Disney's personality that would enable us even to get halfway there before we go the whole way. Okay? Yeah? So, Robert Dilts sort of took these tales, put them in his computer, and he thought, right, well, it seems to me as though this Disney has sort of maybe 3 different paths or 3 different states or something like that. He said, to me it seems as though when he comes in and everything's possible and everything's wonderful, he's in a dreamless state. He just has the dreams and visions. But then on the bad days, he walks in and he's in the hypercritical state. Nothing's going to work, you've got to do that, get that sorted out by Friday. You know? But then, he's got this other thing, the realist. When he takes a perfectly clear view of things, he has the feeling that everything is right. You ever had that feeling? Isn't that the feeling that you get when you know it's time to do something? When it feels right? And that's one way that the Walt Disney in strategy has been interpreted. All the time that you've got, let us say, differences in view between the critic and the dreamer, it's going to be unrealistic. So what this process does is to balance the wild schemes and dreams of the dreamer with the criticism of the critic, so that the realist can balance the two. Okay. Have you got any questions so far? Anytime any questions come up, please ask.
Yeah, how do we do it? I mean,
How do you do it?
Learn this, yeah.
How do you do it?
What?
Is that of interest to all of you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, well, okay. How do you do it? Right, well, the easiest way, I suppose, initially, is for me to show you how. Okay? So I'll give you a little demonstration of how you do it. But while I'm doing this, you can actually be following it through in your chair, because you guys are really good at accessing space. This is the traditional way of doing the Walt Disney. Okay? But you know about anchoring now, and you know that you can anchor states in any and many ways. I'm just going to show you the traditional way. You take some pieces of paper and you put a D on it. Not for Dave, no. A D for dreamer. Okay? And you take another piece and you put an R for realist. And you put that on the floor as well. And on the third piece you put a C for critic. Alright? And I'll give you a handout that has got all this in. For now, just watch, listen, and feel what you feel. Okay? Stage one is you identify times, states when you were a dreamer, a realist, and a critic. Okay? Then, having established those, you then think of a dream that you've got, or an issue, a problem, call it what you will, but something you want to get done, let's say. Okay? And then, having set up the dreamer, realist and critic, you then look at the problem through the eyes of the dreamer, realist and critic. I'll show you exactly how to do it. Okay? First of all, access a dreamer state. Remember a time when you had a dream? Yeah? Remember Martin Luther King? I have a dream. You know where to look to get visions, don't you? They're all up there. So remember a time and access that state when you just had this brilliant idea. You were going to go for it. Okay? You got that? And you can anchor it however you will. You can do it on a knuckle or whatever. Right? So then you break state, you think of Mickey Mouse maybe. Or Disneyland or whatever. Then think of the time when you were being totally realistic. You step onto the realist. Realist. And for your own interest you may explore submodalities and things like that. If that's what you want to do. Think about being realistic. And you can accentuate it again. You know how to do it. So I've got a realist state there. Step up. And maybe now you think of the Eiffel Tower, or how about in Canada you might think of the Queen of England. And would you like the tax bill that goes with her? And then you can step on to a time when you were critical. I mean, positively critical. When you get that little voice nagging in there, you know what I mean? Yeah? You've met that little voice nagging away in there saying, oh, don't be so stupid, you can't do that. Even if the bank would lend you the money, you'd never be able to repay it, would you? No? Okay. So you get one of those things. Alright? No! You break states. So now have you all self-anchored in some way those states? Okay, because we can actually simulate the exercise as I do with them. So now think of something that you would really want to do. Running training courses, or that sign above the therapy room with your name in lights, or whatever. Okay? You pick up whichever one. So we go to the dreamer state. Okay? So on the dreamer, we now think about that thing that you want through the eyes of the dreamer. And what does it look like? And sometimes it's really interesting to actually check the submodalities. Okay? So you see what the dreamer looks like. How does that issue look from the perspective of the dreamer? Okay, now I don't want you to enjoy it too much. So you break that state, okay? Think of Vincent van Gogh and the sunflowers, or Monet's years at Giverny.
Wait, am I supposed to anchor that?
No.
Oh.
No. Alright? Now, taking the same problem, the same thing that you want, go to the realist. What does the realist think? And note the submodalities again. Okay. So we had a little touch of the realism. Okay, come back. Taking the thing that you want again. Now get onto the critic. And just listen to that voice. What sort of chat's going on here now? Okay, that's enough of that critic. Okay. Now, have you noticed any shifts in submodalities yet? You have already. So, I also had a guy who he said, I've got this problem. He said, I get all these terrific ideas, but I never do anything about them. So I said, ha-ha, we'll do Walt Disney. Put him on the dreamer square, terrific, wow, zap, bang, pow. Go to the realist square, and he says, no, I haven't got one of them. What are we doing here? So I said, oh, well, step back. I said, do you know someone who's a realist? And he said, yeah, there's a woman in our office, she's a realist. Everything straight down the middle. So I said, okay. Can you make a picture of this woman? She said, yeah. I said, okay. So, this time, step on the realist square and make a picture of the woman. And he did this, and as he did it, he started to shake. he physically started to shake and sweat. And I pulled him off quickly, and I took him back off. He said, my God, he said, I would not have believed that. He said, that was so uncomfortable. I said, oh, good. So we'll work on it a bit, we'll make it more comfortable for you. God, he said, that was absolutely stunning. But that was his problem. He'd got wonderful dreams, he'd got a powerful critic, but no realist. Which meant he never got anything done. Or not anything of the wonderful dreams. Drive carefully home. See you next week.